comedy writer and humorist Doug Kenney completely changed the American comedic landscape. After founding the Harvard and National Lampoon, he brought a specific dark and twisted satire that gave comedy and took comedy to a dangerous edge. That's today on Death in Entertainment.
Live from Los Angeles.
911, what is your emergency?
Here in Hollywood now.
2 counts of murder,
Injury and death.
Oh my God!
Shocking new details
That has stunned the entertainment world.
This makes me a little nervous.
The hair stood up on my arms.
Just like in the movies.
What do you call this thing anyway?
Death
In
Entertainment.
Hello, Dipod Universe.
Yes, we are back here.
We are back yet again.
I'm back in the studio.
Hey,
Whoa.
there you are. Where'd you go?
I was getting my legs waxed after last episode. Well, the one before that, everyone was commenting on my leg situation.
Yeah,
so
your legs are very distracted.
getting very self-conscious, and I might file an HR report, actually, with some of our listeners.
Yeah, we're going to have to speak to somebody.
They're canceled.
It was basically like Basic Instinct.
Yeah.
While I was editing, every time Mark crossed his legs, I was like,
Yeah.
whoa.
You were like Newman from Seinfeld in that.
Oh, gee, thanks.
No.
I'm not Michael Douglas, of course. I'm
No.
Newman.
Well, Newman's the one that's really like losing his shit in Basic Instinct.
Okay. Yeah, the sweat.
Yeah,
You beat his sweat
yeah.
down his forehead.
It's not getting better, but yeah, you know what I mean. You know.
Yeah, of course.
He's the only other person besides Michael Douglas I can reference from that
And if you had
Gucci
to,
scene, I could call it.
Yeah.
if you had to pick one,
Yeah, that's one person I know.
Yeah. So what is going on, everybody? My name is Kyle Plouffe.
My name is Mark Mulcairn.
And I'm Alejandro Dowling.
And today we are going into the tragic death of Mr. Doug Kenney.
Doug Kenney, yes, legendary TV writer. Not even TV writer. I think he was when TV writing boomed. Before that happened, he was just like an overall humorist kind of guy.
Comedy writer.
Comedy writer, yeah.
Lampoon guy.
Lampoon guy. Started
Yeah.
Lampoon, yeah.
Set
He
the
created
tone.
it.
He co-created with 2 other people, but he's like the most prominent person that people remember.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And
he
very influential in, just comedy in general, the movies. And,
Absolutely, yeah.
Shows,
Animal
magazines.
House, Caddyshack, and his inspiration is sought throughout comedy after the 1970s. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Looking forward to it.
And we have a string of episodes here that are somewhat related. We did Winehouse.
Yep.
Then we did The Mouse House.
Yeah.
And now we got Animal House.
Oh my God. Alejandro came in ready to go. He had the Basic Instinct leg thing locked and loaded.
Yeah.
He had all that stuff ready to go.
All right. We're all ready to go. Everybody in the car. We're going to August 27th, 1980.
Let's go. Okay, August 27, 1980. Kyle, can you help me out with the top 3 songs at this time?
Let's see what we got here. August 27th, 1980. Number 3, the SOS Band. Take Your Time to Do It.
This is like a yacht rock. I think yacht rock is like big right now.
It's good advice, though.
Yeah, take your
Gotta-
time to do it.
Why rush?
Yeah. Well, let's rush into number 2, though.
Let's do it. Olivia Newton-John, Magic.
Yeah.
Da-da-da, magic.
Magic.
It was all right.
Okay.
Oh, it's magic.
Is that the song?
No, it's not.
I didn't even listen to any of these songs before I wrote them down. I'm like, yeah, that's a song, I
Yeah,
guess.
sure.
I'll take your word for it.
Number 1, Christopher Cross, Sailing.
Sailing. I know this one.
Yeah.
That was beautiful.
That is yeah, thank you.
Clearly, you knew that one.
Email us for bookings.
Yeah.
Christopher Cross, he was huge for 5 minutes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Then he was gone.
Yeah, no relation to the 90s hip hop group, Criss Cross.
Chris Cross, yeah.
No. And I love this guy because he looked like a normal schlub on the street.
Yeah.
And yet he was this Grammy-winning, million-selling song,
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was every pop white guy singer in like the 70s and 80s and stuff, like Genesis and stuff. They all look like guys that could work as shoe salesmen, but they're like these big rock stars or something. Anyway, Alejandro, could you help us out with the top 3 movies?
Yeah, number 3, The Octagon.
Bum, bum, bum.
Not to be confused with The Circle.
Yeah, I don't know what this movie is.
I have no idea.
Imagine how weird this movie is and like
Yeah, we gotta
how
find
terrible.
out
Yeah.
a little bit about this
Yeah,
movie.
can we get like the trailer or something for the Octagon?
Chuck Norris.
Of course.
Enough said.
Yeah.
Hot off of killing Bruce Lee.
Yep. The Octagon. The Ninja. Unholy Masters of Terror. No one will admit that they still exist. The
Okay.
Octagon.
Yeah.
That is sort of related to Bruce Lee.
It is.
The Secret Killers.
Maybe they got him because Bruce Lee got killed. Maybe Chuck Norris did have a reason to kill him.
The Star Whackers.
Yeah, the Star Whackers.
Yeah. Only one man can stop the Star Whackers.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
the
Ask Brandon
poster-
Quaid about that.
Yeah.
The poster is very ominous looking.
Very.
He has a
Yeah.
like a ninja disguise on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is something you don't normally put on huge movie stars on posters.
It's true.
Well, you know, there was the time for like kung fu movies was very big at this time. I feel like, especially B movies. They always stayed at number 3. They never got to number 2.
Yeah.
Speaking of number 2,
Xanadu rhymes with two.
yeah, Xanadu. I'm doing this movie called Xanadu.
Wait, who was that?
That's my Sean Connery.
Oh, okay. I don't think he was in that, but
Xanadu?
no,
Oh!
you're thinking of James Bond.
No, I'm thinking of that weird Sean Connery movie.
Xanadu is Olivia Newton-John, which makes sense that she had one of the top 3 songs as well.
Yeah, so she's all over the place this
I'm
year.
thinking of Zardoz. Zardoz.
Oh, yes. That's the one where he's wearing that really weird space outfit.
Yeah, it
and he
looks-
has a ponytail.
Yeah. It puts my shorts to shame. As far as the revealing and everything.
Yeah, your shorts were rather conservative compared to
I'd say so.
that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Xanadu, Gene Kelly came out to play for that one.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, yeah.
Co-starred with Olivia Newton-John.
That movie just seemed like a coke dream or something. It just
Oh, yeah.
seems insane.
Yeah, it is. I haven't seen it fully, but from what I have seen, there's lots of colors
Yeah.
and 80s fades.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of like Barbarella or something.
Yeah.
Just weird.
Campy.
Campy, weird noises and things are happening and it looks like crap. But I love it.
Yeah, we love it. Yeah, lots of those like matte painting backgrounds and
Yeah. Just a cheap set.
smoke machines.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's like some MGM lot bullshit.
But would we have it any other way? No, I don't think so.
Absolutely not.
I would take that over the CGI of today.
I take that over the Flash. Tell you that much.
I don't think you like the Flash very much.
I hated the Flash.
Yeah.
And the Flash hates me.
Well, the Flash doesn't care what you think about it.
Yeah.
All right, number one. Number one. Did you hear me?
Yes.
Numero uno.
Numero uno.
Smokey and the Bandit.
Yeah.
Starring Burt Reynolds and Sally Field.
Can't miss this one.
Huge hit.
Yeah.
Really dumb. This makes the Dukes of Hazzard seem intellectual.
Yeah. Seemed
had
like Tenet. Looks like Dukes of Hazzard look like Tenet.
Yeah. It had no plot. It's just a long car chase
Yeah.
with a couple of one-liners. I think Dom DeLuise was in it as well.
That's my Dom DeLuise.
That's great.
Thank you.
But yeah, it made a lot of money. That's why there were 3 Smokey and the Bandits.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Burt Reynolds could sell a movie. You know, say what you will about that guy.
Yeah.
He can sell a movie.
He was
Sell a
bald.
movie. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, he had
You
fake
guys
hair.
told me that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
I had no idea.
wore a rug.
Wow. Very believable.
Yeah. Good rug.
Sean Connery, too.
Great rug.
Sean Connery wore a rug?
Yes.
I thought he was just kind of gracefully balding throughout his life.
No. He
Oh.
took it off for a while.
Yeah.
Well, after when he started to really get older, he took it off. But yeah, during the James Bond years, that was a wig.
Like Travolta did. Travolta was just like, hey, I'm wearing a wig. Then one day he's like, yeah, I'm not going to wear the wig anymore.
His wig, though, was so fake looking, Travolta's.
Yeah. It was Travolting.
Hey.
And speaking of Travolting, we're about to Travolt into this episode.
Okay, I'll give it to you. Yeah. Okay, Doug Kenney. Let's talk about the early life of this gentleman. Born in West Palm Beach, Florida, to Estelle Stephanie Karch was her maiden name, and Daniel Harold Harry Kenney. Both originally from Massachusetts.
What's up, massholes?
Western Mass, though, so I don't know if it counts. Like the Chicopee area, which is
we'll allow it.
very dicey. We'll allow it. The family eventually moved and settled in Chagrin Falls, Ohio.
Ohio.
Which Doug always found that funny. Chagrin Falls. It's like it means like kind of shitty.
Right.
Much chagrin.
His dad got work as a tennis bro and tennis bro.
Tennis bro.
Hey, yo, what's up?
Yeah,
I'm your tennis instructor, dude.
So yeah, he that was kind of his job. The family was kind of like, they were like the sons and daughters of immigrants. Basically, they were like one generation away from being the servant class. So they're trying to make their way up. So if you ever saw Caddyshack, which Doug Kenney obviously wrote and is inspired by his life, he's basically the Danny Noonan character.
Noonan.
Yeah, Noonan. In which he's like kind of like from a crazy Irish Catholic family, and that's kind of like the same thing that was going on with Doug's background here. Doug lived here from 1958 to 1964. It's considered to be a place that helped kind of define him. He grew up an outsider, very quiet observer of sorts. Smart kid, very smart. He would be like, he like ran the newspaper and stuff. He would make friends, but never like very on the surface. Never like he would have like friends at school and stuff, but no one like ever came home to play with him or play hockey or anything like that. He was just kind of a loner in that respect.
Which is a similar trajectory to many famous comedy minds.
Yeah.
Robin Williams was a loner as well.
Yeah, that's true. And he was definitely one of those. But it depends on what type of performer. Some performers are like, like the Bill Murray type. They had friends like every day of their lives, people around them.
John
all the time.
Belushi.
Same thing with John Belushi. Yeah, and I think that's why he got along kind of with those guys later on. But actually, Chevy Chase became like his best friend. Wow. And I think Chevy Chase had a similar thing in which he grew up in like an affluent background, seemingly, but he never felt like he fit in with those people. So,
which is crazy too, because I mean, just from the little that I've heard about Doug, it sounds like he's like a really nice guy.
Yeah,
but Chevy Chase is like a world-renowned asshole.
I think that's it, and I think that it's like
opposites
a manipulative kind of situation, maybe.
Oh, maybe. Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to really get to the core of what their friendship was all about. You'd have to really dig in on someone like a Brian Doyle Murray or like Bill or Venkman or people like that. Not Venkman, the
Harold Ramis.
Ramis. Yeah. Because they would really know exactly what the dynamics of that relationship is all about.
Right.
But also from Chagrin Falls actually was Tim Conaway from the Carol Burnett Show. That was like the main guy like from that town where people like everyone in town loved him. Everyone knew him when he grew up there. But like Doug was not that guy.
No.
Like no one even knew he existed in Chagrin Falls.
Wow.
And he kind of liked it that way, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tim Conway's of the era of one of those comedy legends that was always on Carson.
Yep.
Later in the Carol Burnett Show.
Yeah.
Just a beloved.
Very like, I would say safe comedy too.
Yeah, exactly. The one that appealed to middle America.
Yeah, exactly. And you could actually play him with the family and stuff, and nothing Doug ever did you could do around your parents or vice versa. Doug's brother Daniel was really like the golden boy of the family. He was 7 years older, and he went to Kent State while Doug was still in high school. He was just kind of like the way I read it when I was kind of reading the book about Doug was it was kind of like Stand By Me. Do you remember John Cusack's character in that and like the main character? Like John Cusack's character dies, and the parents like loved him, and now they feel like they've lost everything, even though they still have this son. And Doug is a son like they still have. He's kind of a bookie nerd,
right?
But he's not the same as the brother who died, because Doug's brother would actually, he was the golden boy, went to college, got married, and then he got in like this weird car accident where he flipped his car.
Oh shit!
And they found that he had like really bad like kidneys, and he wound up dying of kidney failure like later, like as a younger guy.
Wow!
And that,
as a result of the car accident?
Not even the car accident. The doctor,
he was diagnosed because he got
of that. The doctors actually did like an inspection of like his liver and his kidneys and stuff, and saw that he had like a failing renal system there. Or something. Yeah.
For a second, I thought you said he flipped his car, died, and they're like, he passed away from kidney failure.
Yeah, it was COVID. Yeah,
So, yeah, pre-existing condition.
It sounds like a Disney World kind of stuff there.
So he had like a serious problem with his bladder and kidneys, and doctors weren't able to really see that until like they had to open him up and actually see what was going on there, because his brother had like spina bifida when he was younger. So I think it might have been related to that as a young kid.
Wow.
Doug went to Catholic high school, this place called Gilmore Academy. In fall of 1960, he was a freshman there.
So he was a Gilmore boy.
He was a Gilmore boy,
Hey.
yeah. He met this legendary teacher named Ivo Reagan. They called him Mr. Gilmore, this guy. He was like Robin Williams in Dead Poets Society, basically. He'd stand on desks and give these
Captain, my Captain.
He'd wear like berets and shit like that.
Oh,
and, like,
God.
give these like big speeches standing on desks like
I want to
maniac.
beat him up.
Yeah. He'd have like an old cane he like leaned against and stuff.
Yeah.
Did Shakespeare soliloquies in a Marlon Brando voice?
Once more into the breach, my good man. You're like, all right, it's 8 a.m, Mr. Gilmore. Let's relax.
Take it down a notch.
Take it down.
Slap that beret off your head.
Yeah.
Can we sit down now? We've been standing on this desk for an hour.
But he was one of those guys that really, he really inspired Doug. He was like, what Doug really needed.
Yeah.
Just kind of another outsider, but who was actually on the inside. Because it's like a prestigious kind of academy for that area. So it's not like they're like all like, downtrodden outsiders. It's like not a bad place to be, but he's like kind of a weird guy within the system there.
Yeah, and it's good as a young person to see, like, when you're looking at most adults, you're like, oh, everyone's just like kind of friggin' boring and just goes to work and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It's cool to see someone who's weird as an adult.
Exactly. Yeah. And doing things a little subversively.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not just, exactly. Not just waking up, doing the same mundane things and, hating life. This guy actually, I guess Doug said he was closeted gay too.
Oh, wow.
Which, might speak to why he always felt like an outsider himself, maybe, in this Catholic kind of, priesthood kind of like world.
Wait, so Kenny was, or Doug was, or Ivo?
Ivo was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Mr.
Yeah, yeah.
Gilmore was.
Wow.
So this guy that's giving these big rousing speeches, I think he maybe he always had aspirations of being a big actor. Some people just like either they give it a shot and it doesn't work, or they just always have kind of had that thing. They want to be something bigger than they were.
Yeah.
And they feel that all the time.
And they become an inspirational teacher then.
Yeah.
There you go.
And they make their students stand on desks also.
Right.
Yeah.
You need
After
to
they
have-
get fired.
I think you need to have some strong desks at these academies.
Yeah, everyone's standing on them.
I wonder that poor handyman they hired.
Yeah, the janitor's like, I'm
We
tired
broke
of these boys standing on the deck, sir. I've been having to fix them all semester.
We broke another desk.
You twink, stop tap dancing on the fucking desks.
Yeah. Our desk budget is $20,000 a week at this academy. We can't take it. Like I was saying, he became the head of the school newspaper, and he was very funny and subversive while he did it.
And I imagine the school newspaper was a great place to warm up.
Yeah, I think it was one of those things he'd do, like, things where he poked fun at, like, the administration and stuff, and principals, and, did kind of like cheeky things, but, like, not going over the edge. That was his big thing. Like, he knew how to, like, play within, like, the rule books of, being absurd enough and not, like, really crossing the line.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Testing the limits of free speech.
Yeah. Until it came to this, like, end of year talent show when he was a senior, where he did this big monologue in which he touched on subjects like abortion, birth control, racial issues, and like a lot of like crazy things in front of like the entire auditorium and like all the parents and stuff that came out.
At a Catholic school, no less.
At a Catholic
Wow,
school. Yeah.
that's crazy.
And this is something he would, Mr. Gilmore really inspired him to do.
And this is in the 70s.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, the 60s. This
Oh,
is like
60s.
1964.
Whoa.
1965, like around there.
Wow.
Yeah. And
That is exactly like Dead Poets Society.
Yeah.
I wonder if any of that was. I know it was based on the author's experience, but very much similar to this.
Yeah, it seems very similar, but obviously, that's not the story Doug would ever write.
No, not at all.
The headmaster got really pissed about this crazy monologue, but he didn't really do anything about it. So that's pretty much his senior year, and he's ready to go to Harvard. Sad story. Years later, Ivo Reagan, Mr. Gilmore, would later commit suicide in the basement of Gilmore Academy in 1976.
Oh my God.
Yeah, about 10 years after.
Jeez.
Yeah, very sad story.
Yeah.
Maybe I thought he would be living vicariously through Doug and seeing like, hey, you're doing this big National Lampoon thing. You know, you're amazing, and I'm very happy. But maybe he had a lot of other stuff going on there.
Yeah, too bad Doug couldn't somehow involve him in the National Lampoon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in 1964, Doug starts at Harvard and joins the graduating class of 1968.
Boston, baby.
Welcome to Cambridge, motherfucker. So he actually becomes friends with former Massachusetts Governor William Weld.
Fucking Billy Weld.
Yeah, which is also weird because we were talking about Woody Harrelson being friends with Mike Pence.
Yeah.
In the Woody Harrelson's Crazy Dad episode.
So a lot of political and comedic crossovers in history.
I guess so.
He meets another good friend, this guy, Peter Ivers, who was from Brookline, which is like right down the street, and like a very fun musical guy. And Doug would become very good friends with him. This guy, actually, there's a lot of weird deaths around Doug Kenney's life. Besides his own, which we'll get into, obviously. But his friend, this avant-garde musical artist, Peter Ivers, is murdered in 1983.
That's in Skid Row, right? L.A.?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yes. I have this in my notes.
Really?
Yeah.
From what?
To do an episode on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is Doug Kenney's, like, he was down the hall from him at Harvard.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And he was bludgeoned to death with a hammer, and no one ever knew who did it or what happened.
Yep.
Oh my! That's like Bob Crane.
Yeah, and like he was friends, and Doug introduced him to like Aykroyd, Harold Ramis, like Bill Murray, all these guys. He was friends with all them too, and John Belushi.
Yeah.
They would all go out to Martha's Vineyard together, where Belushi had a big spread there.
Yeah, I think Peter Ivers did like some sound for films and.
I think Doug got him a couple things. Either way, Doug is very comfortable at Harvard while he starts out there. It was his first time. He kind of felt like he fit in.
Yeah.
He's out. That's a big, culture shock right there.
Right.
But for someone that really hated where they came from, it's a good culture shock.
Yeah, exactly. And Harvard's such a weird place where it's like you're going to school with, doctors and lawyers and all these like super intellectuals, and then you have the Harvard Lampoon there where it's just people fucking around.
Yeah.
But they all end up going on to write for every fucking TV show there possibly is.
Yeah. And I don't know what I heard someone told me that like there was a definitive start when like Harvard Lampoon people like there was a direct connection, like a pipeline directly to TV writing.
Oh, there is.
I mean, I think it started in the late
Conan?
50s or 60s, or it started around this time, I feel like.
Colin Jost is like the newest one.
Yeah. Well, Al Jean and this guy, Mike Reeves, who did The Simpsons. Al Jean is now the showrunner of The Simpsons, or the former one or something. But yeah, there was a pipeline from the National Lampoon, which actually was created as a result of the Harvard Lampoon.
Right.
Conan too, right?
Conan, yeah. He was the head editor of the Harvard Lampoon when he went to Harvard. Yeah.
So there was still a Harvard Lampoon in Conan's time. Because you know how you're going to get into this, but it morphed into National Lampoon magazine. But did Harvard still retain its other version of it as Harvard Lampoon?
They did, yeah.
Okay.
So I'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, they did actually retain like the integrity of the college Lampoon as compared to the New York-based one, which was the National Lampoon.
The National, got it.
Yeah. So yeah. Doug's very comfortable there. People think he's like a waspy New England blue blood type of guy, which they think he comes from like, an affluent background, in which, he's totally the opposite.
Right.
He comes from kind of very working class background there in Ohio, and people think he's like, he comes from money, but he kind of likes that, I think. He kind of dresses like that too, you know, probably khakis and like boat shoes and stuff.
The glasses.
Yeah, the glasses, yeah, very definitive, like kind of like circle frame glasses he has.
Mm-hmm.
His best friend becomes this guy, Harry Beard, who will go on to be his like business partner and frequent collaborator. He starts the National Lampoon with him after they work together at the Harvard Lampoon. Yeah, and this guy, Henry Beard, was everything that Doug wanted to be. Like, he was waspy, old money, intellectual.
Mm-hmm. Another good pairing then. Like we were just saying, opposites attract.
Kind of opposite. I think it's kind of like a similar Chevy Chase kind of dynamic where, you know, he looks up to this guy. He's always looking for like an older brother, I feel like.
Yeah.
Or someone like that he wants to be like. Him and Henry eventually get to the Harvard Lampoon where they start writing. At the time they get there, the Harvard Lampoon, it like sucks. Like, it's like, you know how every organization has its ebbs and flows?
Yeah.
Like UCB now, they like 5 years ago, if you were on UCB team, like, you know, it was pretty much a cash register to like get any commercial or TV show in the world.
Yeah.
Now it's like, what the hell is UCB anymore? Like, people who started out there were like George Plimpton, Fred Gwynn. I don't know if you know Fred Gwynn, the guy who was the judge in My Cousin Vinny.
And Herman
Oh my
Munster.
God.
And Herman Munster, yes. I was just
Wow.
Yeah, so that's like the two biggest people that came out of the Harvard Lampoon at that time. So,
Fred Gwynn.
That's so funny.
that was the name. That
Well, the
came out of-
Munsters, they were big.
Yeah, the Munsters were big, yeah. And he was literally, he's like 7 feet
giant.
tall, yeah.
Yeah.
So in 1965, while Doug is there in the early days, this guy Walker Lewis takes over. And Walker Lewis, you know, revitalizes the whole thing. There's like $3,000 left to its name at the Harvard Lampoon. He has this great idea to do a Playboy episode of the Harvard Lampoon. So they're just going to spoof an entire episode of Playboy,
Oh, wow.
which is like the #1 thing right now. It's like if you were going to spoof Maxim magazine in 1998.
Right. Huge.
It's hot.
Yeah.
And by episode, you mean just an issue?
And it, yeah.
Yeah, in addition of the Harvard Lampoon is basically a parody of Playboy. But I think they find out within, you know, sex sells actually is a real thing.
Oh, it's very real.
Yeah.
And it would be a crutch for them in their later years, as you'll get to.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. So this is basically the cover here.
Special parody issue.
Yeah. So they had to put that on there, I think, for legal reasons.
Yeah.
Well, they
I love that because that reminds me of when Norm Macdonald used to say, "And now for the fake news."
yeah. On SNL.
It was $1.25.
$1.25, please.
Yeah.
That's pretty pricey for that day and age.
Yeah. I think so, but they're Harvard kids out. You know, they're
Yeah.
like, you know, if you can't cough up $1.25 at Harvard, you know, go fuck yourself.
That's true.
Get the fuck out of here.
So they asked Hugh Hefner if they could do this, and Hugh Hefner says no, and this guy Walker Lewis flies out to Chicago to tell Hugh Hefner to his face that he's doing it anyways.
Nice.
And they kind of buckle because they talk to their lawyers, and their lawyers are like, if you get sued, you know, it's the best thing that'll happen to you.
Yeah, exactly.
So, because they can't really do anything, because if they specifically put parody on the cover, they can't really do anything about it.
Yeah, it's totally fair use.
Yeah. So this brings Playboy back into being like a relevant thing again. I mean, the Harvard Lampoon into being a relevant thing again. It sells 500,000 copies.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait, so they got they put this on newsstands like everywhere?
Yeah, I think they must have sent it out everywhere around Massachusetts because it sold 500,000 copies.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I wonder what the circulation was for the regular Playboy or the sales at that time.
I don't
wonder
know.
if
That's a
that
good
rivaled
question.
a normal issue of Playboy.
No, I think Playboy's in the millions.
Way
at this
more than
point.
that. Okay.
Yeah.
But still, 500,000, that's massive.
It is massive for this little college publication. It's insane.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So this is around the time where Doug becomes like a key person at the Lampoon, which is like the perfect time to kind of come into it. He like this worked out perfectly for him because it became a relevant thing. They're starting to get a little more wild, obviously, at the Harvard Lampoon. Before it was just like a building where they'd have like stuffy parties where they, you know, drank sherry and smoked cigars.
Yeah, it was just like a club. It was a
It was
hang.
just a club. I don't know if you've seen it, like in Cambridge there, but it's like an old, like kind of castle-looking building.
Oh, I'm sure I've seen
near
it.
like the Brattle, I think.
Yeah. So they have just their own building for the Lampoon.
Yeah, they have their own building.
Oh, wow.
So which had been there since like the late 1800s or something.
Yeah.
So this has been around forever.
At its peak, Playboy would sell around 5 million copies.
Whoa.
Yeah. So they're just riding the coattails of that, which is brilliant. That's what you got to do.
Yeah.
Always put an attractive girl on the cover and just ride the coattails of something else. Nothing wrong with that.
As you said, sex sells.
There we go.
That's right. So yeah, Doug is like a flamboyant, wild character over at the Lampoon now, and he's like a well-known, established person. Like people like, this guy's funny, he's insane, like he has good ideas, and not just like, let's put like a naked girl on the cover. He has like actual intellectual parody ideas that he wants to do. He has ideas for the magazine going forward.
It's a smart satire.
Yeah, he's the type of guy that has like the ability to bring the best out of everyone. He's kind of like a leader that is not like an over-the-top gregarious prick.
Yeah.
Which a lot of leaders kind of like, settle into because it's easier.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of has his own style. Okay, so finishing Harvard in 1968. Doug is finishing at Harvard. Him, Henry, and this guy, Robert Hoffman, are like, what are we going to do with our futures? Because that must be, if you're a Harvard guy, you feel like it must feel different because you basically have a credit card to do anything you want in the world.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The only problem with getting out of college in 1968 is you're now eligible for the Vietnam draft.
Eligible. Thank you.
Yeah, he's an eligible bachelor. You want
We've
in?
got some good news. You are eligible for the draft.
Yeah. Do we got the plan for you?
Going to beautiful Vietnam.
In an unjustifiable tragedy of a war.
And you're going to burn it down.
You want to get involved in the My Lai massacre?
Yeah.
Get in here.
You
You
want
like-
prostate cancer later in life? Agent Orange is for you.
It sounds like Chris Farley selling the Vietnam War. This is for you, brother.
Let the boy go to war.
Let the boy hold the blowtorch in the village.
I just want to kill your family. Let the boy kill your family.
So these three buddies, Robert Hoffman, Henry Beard, and Doug Kenney, they all want to start their own magazine out of college, based off of the Harvard Lampoon. The problem is they got to get out of the Vietnam draft.
Jeez.
So how do they do that?
Henry Beard had the great idea of advising Doug to just keep postponing the doctor's physical. And then eventually, once he got the doctor's physical, Henry Beard told him to pretend he was going into an epileptic fit and have foam coming out of your mouth. And Doug did all these like jumping jacks and like cartwheels to get out of the draft. And then the doctor was like, "Oh, you have glasses? Oh yeah, you were out for that."
Wow.
Meanwhile, Doug is trying
He's trying so
he's
hard.
like method acting to get out of the Vietnam War.
Wow.
Hoffman actually is the only one of the three actually has to go.
Oh, my God.
Oh, he actually went?
Yeah, he went into the reserves. He never went overseas to go into the war.
Wow.
His dad had a lot of money in Texas, and, you could buy your way out of these situations. Let's be honest.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. That was the whole thing with the Vietnam War, the people with the silver spoons.
Yeah, like George W. Bush.
Yeah.
I know, fortunate son.
Yeah. So it was kind of like that situation where he went to the reserves, and he's not going to war. So Doug is out of college and bumming around the Harvard campus still. He and I think his friend Henry Beard was actually a year behind him, so he had to wait for him for a year to actually do something. And they're also waiting for Robert Hoffman to get out of the reserve so that they can start something. In the meantime, they wrote a parody called Board of the Rings, parody obviously on Lord of the Rings.
Nice.
They wrote the writer Tolkien. How do you pronounce it? Tolkien. They wrote him like they did Playboy years before. It's like, hey, can we do a parody on your, on your book Lord of the Rings? He's like, yeah, go ahead. It's a silly book anyway. He says.
Nice.
He ain't lying.
So they do that, and that does pretty well. It sells 750,000 copies.
How does that do better than the Playboy
Yeah.
episode?
I don't know.
How do hobbits sell more than naked chicks?
But they
Yeah.
they only make $4,000 each. So I don't know any of the accounting going on behind any of
I
this
think
stuff.
their accountant was screwing them over.
Yeah, probably. Someone's screwing them over. They got a bad deal.
Their accountant shows up in a Lamborghini.
Yeah.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Somebody else made $740,000.
Yeah, what are we
And they
working on
made
next, fellas?
4,000.
Yeah. he's lighting a $100 bill to light a cigar. What are we working on next, fellas?
Yeah. How about a parody of The Sound of Music?
That's a lot of what they do here. Their next thing they want to do is a parody of Time magazine. That's like their next big white whale they want to work on. So they find this publisher named Matty Simmons, who was actually the guy who created credit cards. He created Diners Club card, which was kind of like the first credit card.
Wow.
And they find this guy in New York somehow who owns this company called 21st Century Communications. The only other major property he owns is Weight Watchers.
They had that then?
Yeah, they had Weight Watchers
Wow.
back in like the late 60s, early 70s. So before they actually do the Time parody, they do a Life parody, which bombs. Yeah, it only sells like half of the 750,000 copies that they printed. So it does not do well. They lost 75,000 on the entire venture overall.
That's in what?
You'd think Life would have been a hit. People love Life.
But then they go back right into it and they do what they always do, which works. Sex sells. They did Time magazine. Does sex sell magazines? Is the headline, and it's basically a naked girl with a bunch of like magazines and her like naked with reading a magazine.
Yeah.
I love how it's so brilliantly satirical,
Yeah.
and yet they're playing the game. They're showing this practically naked model.
They're doing
Yeah.
the thing they're making fun of.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They're having it both ways.
Yeah. This one made 250,000. So they're like it's like a roller coaster ride. You know, they're up and down kind of, but they're looking for someone to finance like a real operation of them doing like a monthly periodical or magazine, whatever.
Okay, so that was finally their time.
Yes. So they move to New York and they get an office right down the street from the Weight Watchers office. And they start building out a staff, working with this guy, Matty Simmons. But yeah, they're like very waspy, like Harvard kids and like waspy Irish, whatever they were.
Yeah.
And he's like a he's like a Rodney Dangerfield type guy, kind of coming into the situation. It's like it was kind of like worlds colliding a little bit. So yeah, at this time you only have like the New Yorker, which is like kind of like comedic stuff for like intellectual, like, you know, New York Manhattanites, kind of like older people like that. Mad Magazine was for like kids up to like 10 years old, and there was a big gap of like, you know, comedic humor writing that wasn't really being serviced. So that's kind of what they were going for.
Yeah.
And they even fired shots at Mad Magazine.
Oh, did they? I didn't even see that.
They did a parody where it's Alfred E. Newman on the cover.
Yeah.
And it says, "What, me funny?"
I'm sure they did a bunch of stuff like that. They went after everyone, basically. No one was safe here.
No, and yet,
Well, it clearly worked for them. Anytime they did something that was a knockoff or an attack on somebody else, it would go huge.
I know.
Yeah. So, I mean, that they found a successful model early on.
So
my
they do stuff like this, and
God.
basically, as you can see here, it's a Volkswagen in the water. I guess they floated. I didn't know about this. And the caption says, "If Ted Kennedy drove a Volkswagen, he'd be president today." And it goes into like a regular like Volkswagen like ad.
Oh my God.
And they got sued by
floats.
Volkswagen. Yeah, it floats.
yeah, the ad just shows the VW floating in the water.
Yeah.
That's insane.
And Matty Simmons said of this, it's true. Like if it was a Volkswagen, he would be president.
It says at the end, so it won't stay afloat forever, just long enough. Poor Teddy.
God.
If he'd been smart enough to buy a Volkswagen, he'd be president today.
So the New Yorker Mad Magazine's not doing that.
No. Wow, that's it. I mean, it's way edgier than I would have thought.
Yeah. And then scroll up to this other one here.
Oh, God. If you don't buy this magazine, we'll kill this dog.
We'll kill this dog.
A picture of a dog with a gun to its head.
Yeah.
So stuff like that is not really stuff you'd see on other magazines that are on the newsstand while you're buying like your New York Times.
Jeez.
That definitely gets your attention.
This is darker than anything we've ever said. It says death at the top. The Adventures of Dead Man, Play Dead Magazine, Last Aid Kit, Suicide Letters to Santa.
Yeah, Suicide Letters to Santa.
January 1973.
Yeah.
So this is like really hard-hitting shit.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It's very shocking humor.
I did not realize
by
that.
today's standards, and even then it was. But
Yeah.
you definitely couldn't do this stuff today. They did stuff like that all the time. Like another one, they had a quote on the cover that said, "Give me a magazine cover with a beautiful girl, a dog, or a baby on it, and I'll give you a magazine that sells."
Yeah.
And that's from William Randolph Hearst, the quote. But then the photo is of a mom presenting a dog on a serving tray with a baby overlooking it.
Oh, my God.
Like they're going to eat the dog.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, it's pretty out there stuff.
So the deal was when they started the National Lampoon is they're going to split it like three ways between Maddie, Henry Beard, and Robert Hoffman. Robert Hoffman came in and he was not really the intellectual side. He was more the business person of the three. And so the deal that they made with Maddie Simmons is that after 5 years, he would give them the option of buying them out at 21 times the earnings after 5 years. So I don't know exactly what the accounting is of that either.
Yeah.
But it motivates them to create a working magazine because magazines would be in the red for like 20 years until they made money.
Yeah.
So it motivates them to really jumpstart this magazine and actually start turning a profit very quickly, which they do after a couple years. So just keep that in your mind as we kind of scroll through this. They staff up with hiring some Harvard Lampoon writers that are now at the New Yorker and other periodicals would come in and do like guest pieces from here and there. But they really just went around New York and just found like kind of these crazy people that were like in like the 60s counterculture hanging around New York and stuff. They met through like other like the art scene and stuff and like what like stand up wasn't really a thing yet.
Yeah.
So they kind of had to like hit like the pavement and just kind of meet people and see who they could find. The biggest, I think, person that they hired was this guy, Michael O'Donoghue, who this could be a future episode. This guy was insane.
Michael
O'Donoghue. He was from Buffalo, but he just lived in New York, and he was like a college dropout maniac who...
So not a Harvard guy.
Not a Harvard guy, just a guy that they met.
A Buffalo guy.
A Buffalo guy who was just living on like the Upper East Side or something. He became like a spiritual mentor to Doug. Kind of like the new older brother kind of situation.
He's like his Dr. Sebi.
Yeah.
Dr. Sebi.
It's not going to end well.
Or Mr. Gilmore or something.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
For the Lampoon, his first thing I think was Children's Letters to the Gestapo.
Oh, God.
Which is like a general like edgy thing that he's an edgelord, this guy.
Yeah.
Well, this guy he eventually wound up on SNL and
O'Donoghue.
Yeah. Michael O'Donoghue, yeah. And he did a lot, some would say too much Jewish humor, like to the point that you're like, all right, buddy, is this,
whoa.
like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
like everything's like Adolf Hitler. Like, he did this guy, I think Silverman was the CEO of NBC and like he wasn't doing well. And he did a SNL sketch called The Last Days of Silverman's Bunker, in which he compared NBC network president Fred Silverman's problems at the network to Adolf Hitler in his final days. John Belushi is supposed to be playing the CEO of NBC, and they made the NBC logo look like the Nazi logo.
What?
It's like it's in. They never aired it, obviously. No, they didn't air it. But they put together all these big sets and stuff to do this at SNL.
Unreal.
And what's Lord Michael saying at this time?
Exactly. How could they?
Oh, Michael, that's a great idea.
Great idea.
That's a legendary sketch that never aired because they had planned to make it really long too.
Yeah.
It would come back after a commercial break.
Oh my
So
God.
it was very epic.
But it was like a 10-minute sketch or something that involved
So they went as far as to like literally do it during the run through
Yes.
at the beginning. Oh my god!
And they just didn't air it, I think. This guy was nuts. I guess he made all the writers write on the walls with magic markers. Catherine O'Hara's first day at SNL was all this was going down. She looked at everything and then she just left and never went back to SNL.
Wow.
Yeah, she just quit. He actually co-wrote Scrooge with Bill Murray.
Oh wow.
He didn't do much after SNL and after like that movie. He didn't really do much else. This guy, Michael O'Donoghue. I think he rubbed a lot of people the wrong way.
He just kept telling Jew jokes.
I think that was his big thing. Like, yeah, that was the button he kept going back to. If nothing else works, go to the Jew jokes or something.
Yeah, legendary writer at SNL, and I guess he left the Lampoon in a huff.
Yeah.
Over a girl.
Yes, I'll get into that too.
Wow.
Sorry. They start charging 75 cents per magazine. The April sex issue sells 225,000 copies, so they gotta bump those numbers up.
Yeah, and 75 cents, so it was significantly cheaper than the Harvard Lampoon.
Yeah, true.
50 cents.
I think when they're starting out, I think they plan on losing money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they just wanted people to buy it.
Yeah. December 31st, 1969, Doug asked his girlfriend, Alexandra Appleton Garcia Mata, to marry him. She was a teacher who taught in Washington, D.C., and she'd come back and forth to New York to visit Doug. She was surprised Doug asked her to marry him, but she said yes.
I mean, if you look at this picture, he's batting way above his weight class.
Way
here.
above.
She's gorgeous.
He would do that throughout his life.
Oh, yeah.
And he'd always be whining like, oh, no one likes me, this or that.
That's crazy because he must have been a very charismatic guy. There's no way that you get a girl like that without, having some sort of swag.
And to start the Harvard or the National Lampoon.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of charisma and determination.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got a lot going for him, but I don't know, he's a drug addict also. So you can kind of, in your mind, kind of like fuck with things and thinking like you're not doing well. And I think a lot of these guys, when you're in New York and you're amongst a lot of rich people that are also doing well, you for some reason believe that you're not doing very great comparably.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're always looking, in someone else's house instead of your own and realizing, holy shit, I'm way further along than I would have ever imagined.
I mean, if he's back in Chagrin Falls, like he would have been fucked.
Yeah.
He would have been
just
a tennis pro.
Living in Tim Conway's shadow.
Yeah.
That's it.
Pretty much.
And think about this. Before 1975, there was no SNL. So they were the hippest cat in town.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this is like the big show. Yeah, people don't realize, like, hey, why wouldn't he do SNL if he's a good comedy writer? Why wouldn't he do this? Because the thing didn't existed that they were really into yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is they had to create the thing that they really wanted to do.
Yeah, what he created ended up creating the pathway for everyone to get on SNL and be the writers.
There's no
Become the
Simpsons.
head writers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like all these people end up becoming the showrunners and head writers of these rooms.
There's nothing that people are like aspiring to that is outside of what this is. This is it. It's like when they're starting Facebook, there's no other thing outside of this that anyone wants to be a part of.
Right.
So Doug is now married, working crazy hours at the magazine. His wife, Alex, as he calls her, would call him, hey, are you coming home at any point? And like he'd be like, I'll be back in 20 minutes, and it'll be like 4 more hours, and then he just never comes back.
Oh, that's brutal.
And he's in like, when you're living in New York, the bar culture there is like out of control.
Yeah.
Especially if you're working there and it's the 70s and you're already a drug addict, like you're never coming home.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
where people can't keep up with you. John Belushi
Yeah.
was the same way. Tim Kazurinsky, a good friend of him who was also a SNL cast member later on, said that you'd hang out with John for the night, and then you'd say good night. It's like 10 p.m. Then John Belushi would go out and have a whole nother night with other people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's what's going on here. And like Alex, his new wife, is like, she doesn't even know who he is really. She says he's like an onion. Like once you peel some off, there's more to peel, and you just keep doing that. You never really find the core of who he is.
Just look at their magazine. Look what they printed and put out for the public. Think of what they said behind closed doors.
Oh my God.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the things that they even printed, I'm like, that is crazy.
It's shocking.
At some point with the anti-Semitic stuff, Maddie Simmons had to go and say, no more Jewish stuff.
Yeah.
There was one specifically, it said like, Jewish people are white, and then it said, well, kind of, or something like. It was just like these guys were just. I think they were just drugged up out of their minds, and they thought if it's edgy, it's funny.
Yeah.
And they did that whole photo shoot with the Hitler lookalike.
Yes, they did.
They found this great Hitler lookalike, and then did this whole photo shoot on an island that the premise was if Hitler survived.
Oh my God.
That he's hiding out somewhere, and this is what he's up to.
This was all based on them. They just met some guy in a bar in New York that looked like Hitler.
What?
Yeah. So they're like, we want to hire you to do this photo shoot. And they did it with this guy that looked like Hitler.
Wow.
And they did it in like an entire spread about if Hitler were still alive. This is what would be him hanging out on this island.
Jesus.
So he's bathing on the sand, getting the suntan, drinking a mojito.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But that's like the basis of, what they thought was funny. Sometimes it would hit, and it would be like, oh, that's funny because it's funny, and it's also edgy. Like the dog thing, if you don't buy this issue, we're going to shoot this dog.
Yeah, and even one of the writers, I believe, Ann Beats, said that was something every advertiser wanted to do anyway, but couldn't get away with. Basically saying, buy this magazine or kill this dog.
Yeah. That's the subtext of every magazine, basically.
Yeah.
That's what everyone wants to say.
They wish they could.
Yeah. Over time, they really started like crafting exactly how this magazine was going to look. They got better artists. They got like a person who was actually the head of the art department that started like making sure the entire thing looked professional rather than kind of some ragtag, like, fanzine type thing.
Yeah.
No, it's incredible, the graphics of this magazine.
Yeah.
Really just the parodies look like the actual magazines down to every detail.
Yeah. They started getting more in line with the New Yorker and Mad Magazine as far as the professionalness of the articles and the pictures. Eventually they got up to like 12 million readers at some point.
Wow.
Whoa. Like they started like really kicking ass. So
oh my God.
So they're doing pretty well as far as getting, the readership where it needs to be in order to make this 5-year deal work out for them financially. Around 1971, a year into Doug's marriage, he has an affair with this office secretary named Mary Martello, who everyone calls Mary Marshmallow.
Nice.
He told his buddy Michael O'Donoghue about it, who he considered his like older brother and confidant, who went nuts. Michael O'Donoghue got so pissed off because maybe he was quietly in love with her, or he was just like, or he had something going on with her, but he like disappeared for like a week.
Wow.
And no one knows what happened to him. And he would do this a lot. Alejandro brought it up before, but he got in a lot of like romantic trysts with like people, and like someone would like bang his girlfriend. Like this British guy who was who worked with them, this guy named Tony Hendra. He was a British staff member who was working for the National Lampoon. He played the manager in Spinal Tap. Do you remember Spinal Tap? He played the manager. He was actually the only British guy, I think, on the staff there.
It's a great character, too.
Yeah. He co-created the Lemons with Michael O'Donoghue. And then all of a sudden it came out that he banged Michael O'Donoghue's girlfriend. And Michael O'Donoghue went nuts. And he went to Maddie Simmons' office, the CEO at this time, and he said, "You better fire this limey bastard."
Wow.
Off this magazine, and Maddie Simmons was like, "Fuck you, dude." No.
He fucked me, Mary Marshmallow.
Yeah. Well, it's the other way around. Michael O'Donoghue was not the British guy.
Oh.
So this guy, Michael O'Donoghue, was a disaster. He was kind of like a head case who always had some weird thing going on with a woman there. So either way, this guy, I think you kind of baked that into his brilliance, his insanity. Eventually, they start getting into radio. So not just a magazine, they start doing radio also. They kick off Lampoon Radio, and they start bringing in people like Chevy Chase, John Belushi, Bill Murray, Brian Doyle Murray, his brother, Harold Ramis, this guy Michael Flaherty, and they start doing like Gilda Radner, obviously. And they start doing like these kind of funny parody radio hours things.
And this is in New York City.
This is in New York, yeah. So they bring a lot of these Second City people out from Chicago to kind of do this, and Second City in Toronto too.
Yeah.
And they start doing these, kind of off the wall versions of what the magazine was, basically.
And that's the first spin-off, correct?
Yes.
The radio show?
Yeah. They do a couple things. So they do... Their big project is the radio hour. Radio dinner, which has stuff like John Lennon songs called the Magical Misery Tour, like stuff like that. Ooh, yeah, I want to kill myself, like stuff like that.
Yeah, because he would do these interviews to Rolling Stone complaining about the Beatles and life.
They did Ed Sullivan having nails driven into his eyes.
That was hilarious.
Yeah.
Great shoe.
That's a big nail you got there.
Yeah, they're like, here's what it would sound like.
Yeah.
With if Ed Sullivan had nails through his head or something. Yeah. And it's just some guy going like,
yeah. And that was actually Michael O'Donoghue's real scream.
Wow.
It sounds very real.
Yeah.
That's what's so funny about it.
Yeah.
It's authentic.
And then they do John Belushi stars in the Lemmings, which is they did off Broadway and an album too, which is it's based around the Woodchuck Festival, which is obviously a parody on Woodstock. 3 days of peace, love, and death. Which is it's a lot of it is just kind of making fun of Woodstock.
It was supposed to be a mass suicide, hence the name Lemmings.
Yeah. Oh, I never even put that together.
Yeah, and actually, Doug Kenney wasn't involved in any of this. So he wasn't really excited about it, and he felt left out.
Also, like around this time, Doug Kenney just leaves the Lampoon, and I think he feels like he's not doing what he should be doing with his life. He goes to Martha's Vineyard, drops acid, and starts writing this horrible novel.
Interesting.
He all of a sudden he just writes a note that says, "I'm done with this. See you guys later."
Wow.
And everyone is pissed. And maybe it could have something to do with the fact that he wasn't asked to do the Lemmings or any of the radio hour stuff.
Yeah, because that wasn't supposed to be so huge. It was supposed to be like a
radio
one-off hour, like an episode, one-off,
yeah.
But then it became, like you said, off-Broadway, and it launched all this talent.
Yeah.
And they were clearly forces to be reckoned with, and I think that Doug Kenney felt threatened by that success.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, even though it's a thing that he created and he benefits as a result of all this.
Right, like
Absolutely.
he's peripherally involved in that, even if he didn't have anything to do with creating Lemmings.
And he's just mad he's not the center of it all.
Exactly.
Tony Hendra is good because he's good musically. Like, he's a British guy who's really good at, like, making parody songs. And him and Michael O'Donoghue put all this kind of stuff together, and they get nominated for an Emmy. Like right off the bat with the first album they release.
No way.
So they're like, all right, well, let's put more money into this. Maddie Simmons seems some money. So that's why he pulls in talent like John Belushi and stuff. But NBC approached him to do a satire TV show at this time. And with all the talent that he had there. And he says, that seems like too much work. So they basically, NBC pitched him SNL. Mm-hmm. And Maddie Simmons and the Lampoon passed.
Wow.
And Lorne Michaels like, oh, this seems like a good idea. So he steals all their talent. Someone tells Maddie Simmons, like, you should lock down this guy, at least Belushi or Chevy Chase or a couple other of these guys. And he's like, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to put anyone under contract here. We don't have money for that. And then Lorne Michaels just steals all of them up and starts SNL.
Wow.
Yeah, because the list you read off, that's basically the first
Gilda
cast.
Radner, Chevy Chase, all these people. And then I think Bill Murray comes in the year. SNL starts 1975 is the first year. Mm-hmm. And then Chevy Chase is basically the Bill Murray character. And then they brought in Bill Murray in the next season, 1976. So they just cleaned the clock of the Harvard Lampoon.
And Lorne never stopped doing
Never
that.
stopped.
To this day.
Stealing people.
Yeah, is still being like, oh, that's the pool you take
He's the
from.
Bill Belichick.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
And even the bits, John Belushi doing his Joe Cocker impression
Yeah.
in the Lemmings show, that was a famous impression he did on SNL.
But the thing is, they didn't copyright it or anything at National Lampoon. So Lauren is good. When you go in the door there, you sign away your life.
Yeah.
I think that's what he learned from Maddie Simmons of the National Lampoon. You sign away your life once you go to SNL. But Maddie Simmons had, day contracts on these people for this radio show, and he screwed up.
Yeah.
Wow.
And there is an allure to Hollywood, TV, movies. So when SNL came around, it exploded, an immediate success. And that instantly took away some of the cachet from the National Lampoon.
Yeah. Yeah.
It became hipper.
Well, the National Lampoon now, Chevy Chase went into the office after SNL started, and he's like, no one wants to bang a National Lampoon writer anymore. It's not cool.
Yeah.
What?
In his like kind of shitty, I'm a jerk way.
Yeah.
How funny is this? How horrible I'm being to you. He said that to all the staff at the National Lampoon.
Wow.
Because he was still friends with Doug Kenney. He would kind of like go in there and like fuck with people still.
Right.
And yeah, that was kind of the state of affairs at that time. Like, SNL hit right off the bat.
Yeah.
It was the new cool thing in town. Everyone loved it. Everyone wanted to go there. Carlin and all the big comics of that time went
First
there.
host, George
Yeah,
Carlin.
George Carlin was the
Yep.
first host. Yeah.
But Chevy Chase ends up being the lead role in all the National Lampoon movies.
Yeah. So they have some kind of like weird, relationship in which they're all still friends and everyone still works together.
Yeah.
It's a parallel universe, I think.
It is, yeah. SCTV, National Lampoon,
Yeah.
and SNL are all similar characters that kind of, it's a shared universe, kind of.
And that's a precursor because SNL exploded and was the coolest thing around, but there is an upcoming movie that will change things
Yeah.
for Mr. Kenney.
So Doug Kenney, so after the 5-year thing comes up, the
contract.
in which they could buy out all the main founders. So at this time, that contract is worth each one of them, those founders, Henry Beard and Doug Kenney and Robert Hoffman is worth $2.8 million apiece. Which in 71, 73, I think.
It's like $10 trillion.
Yeah, it's a lot of money, basically. So that guy, Maddie Simmons, is like, are they going to take it? And they take it right off the bat.
Wow.
And that not only that guy, Henry Beard, who when Doug took off and Doug was acting like a maniac in Martha's Vineyard, he was the guy running the show. Mm-hmm. He got on his desk. Everyone's getting on their desk. He stood on his desk.
My captain.
And he goes, fuck all you people. I don't want to be here anymore. I hate all of you. I've hated every day being here. And I'm out of here. After his check cleared, he said all this.
Who said this?
Henry Beard.
Okay. Yeah.
One of the co-founders. Because
Yeah.
he did a lot. Him and Doug did a lot of the writing together.
Yeah.
And actually, Doug Kenney did an insane amount of writing. And so much so that when he did disappear for that time, he was missed.
Yeah.
Because did you read that he would write like all the fake letters to the editor?
Yeah.
He would fill this magazine out.
He did like 80% of the writing
Exactly.
himself. Like just doing a bunch of blow and just writing everything. And I think that's why he had a nervous breakdown. And at 24 years old, Doug Kenney had a nervous breakdown and just escaped the whole situation. Came back with his bad novel because he thought it was a novelist. He gave it to Henry Beard, his friend, to read. And Henry Beard said, this is the worst piece of dribble I've ever read in my life.
Wow.
Yeah, he said reading it was nothing.
Yeah, it was nothing. Yeah.
Absolute nothingness.
And that's what you would get from Henry Beard. Like, I think Doug was kind of like the enigmatic, like, dreamer. And Henry Beard was like the guy who was like, that's the worst idea I've ever heard in my life.
Oh, yeah. Wouldn't he say they'd come in with an idea and he'd go, tempting.
Yeah, and he'd just walk out in the middle of pitches if it was bad enough. So he read this book of Doug Kenney's, and Doug Kenney, after his best friend, told him how bad it was, he threw it out the window in Manhattan. It was like thousands of pages, which went all over the streets.
The manuscript.
Yeah.
Because in those days, it was a typewriter.
Actual typewriter, yeah.
You would have one copy at first.
Oof.
Yeah.
Yikes.
So National Lampoon, after after Michael O'Donoghue quits, because Michael O'Donoghue quits because of this girl, not because of that situation in which his friend banged that British guy, but because they took away his new girlfriend's desk. He decided to quit and he left. And I think he already had a side deal with SNL, so he knew he was going to be okay anyway.
Sure.
He demanded she get a desk.
Yeah, a desk.
They said no.
This guy is insane.
He really is.
Yeah.
But that was a smart move to go to SNL.
Yeah, of course. I think he knew he wanted to go there anyway. Now, he probably just waited until his contract. He waited for a reason to leave.
Yeah.
That's catching lightning in a bottle twice.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
crazy. Being a part of the National Lampoon and then SNL, like...
Hey, man, some people just luck out into great situations.
Oh my God, I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Two things at the start of their the genesis of these two monster, empires.
There's nowhere you'd rather be in the comedy world than those two places.
Jesus.
So after Henry leaves National Lampoon because he got his $2.8 million, he doesn't want anything to do with it anymore. He doesn't give a shit.
Yeah, him and Kenny are now very well off.
Yes, and Doug Kenney's like, okay, I'm leaving too. And Maddie Simmons is like, no, don't leave. We're going to do a movie.
Yeah.
And he's like, really?
All right, I'm listening. So with the 2.8, they had the option to stay and keep working?
Yes, they had the option to keep their ownership and keep building it up rather than getting bought out. Yeah. But they're like, you know what? We've had enough of this. Because I think that it's so painstaking to do that job that 5 years is a long time, and that is the most important time of a magazine, 5 years in.
Right.
Yeah. So Doug Kenney is like, okay, we'll do a movie then. And so they're trying to think of ideas, and they come up with Animal House, and that's the movie that they're going to do. They bring in all their old friends, Harold Ramis. They bring in John Belushi. Kevin Bacon, I guess. All the big names at this time.
Yeah.
So they do this movie, and it's a smash hit.
Yeah, it was originally going to be set in high school.
Yeah.
And then I think it was Maddie Simmons who said, all the depraved stuff you want to do in this movie, that would never work in a high school setting.
Yeah, with children.
Yeah, so they changed it to college.
Yeah, which makes it much better, I guess.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they found an up-and-coming maniac who directed Kentucky Fried Movie.
Right.
Guess who, Kyle?
Fuck, we covered this so early in the podcast.
You really don't remember?
John Landis.
Yes.
Yeah.
There you go. It was based on the college days of Chris Miller, who's one of the contributors at the National Lampoon. He went to Dartmouth, I think.
Which was worlds apart from Harvard.
I didn't know that. I thought Dartmouth, is also Ivy League, and I didn't know these guys had balls up there.
Yeah, so they say that Doug Kenney was fascinated by his college experience because his experience at Harvard didn't have any of that.
No.
Right.
So the movie is a smash hit. It kind of creates a brand new genre of movie, which is like edgy comedy, I guess.
It's like the magazine because that movie had everything.
Yeah.
It had boobs. It had laughs.
Yeah. Shoplifting.
More boobs.
More boobs. More laughs. Dead horse. A horse was
Dead
murdered.
horse,
yeah.
So Doug,
Belushi, of course.
yeah, Belushi. It kind of catapults him into being a big movie star.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It made a ton of money. And to this day, that is one of the most iconic images ever in pop culture. The one of Belushi wearing the college sweatshirt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think everyone would have that poster in college, which is
It was
pretty lame.
mandatory, I
It was
think,
mandatory
in the
yeah.
dorm room.
Came with the dorm. So Doug goes out to Hollywood, and now he's a Hollywood producer. He's no longer a New York guy. He's just living out there. I forgot to mention that he got divorced.
Well, yeah, he was messing around on Alex.
So around 1973, him and his wife divorced, and I guess
Marshmallow?
yeah. So now Doug in Hollywood, he's jonesing to be a movie producer and mogul out there. He's got all the drugs. He's partying like a maniac, even worse than like in Manhattan, which is kind of scary.
Yeah.
His old buddy John Belushi is out there now. So they would hang out from time to time. So I'm sure Doug was part of that second portion of the night that guy was talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one with Robin Williams?
Yes.
Yeah.
Doug writes Caddyshack with Brian Doyle Murray and Harold Ramis. Like I was saying earlier in the podcast, kind of about his life growing up in Ohio there.
So the character you're talking about, he's kind of the naive caddy.
Yep.
And he looks up to Chevy Chase.
Who I guess I don't know who that would be. Maybe like a Michael Donahue or Henry Beard kind of person, like from a privileged background, just doesn't care about anything or anyone in the world, and just kind of like moves about life, happily, and doesn't really get worried about anything.
Or perhaps based on Chevy Chase himself.
It could be also just Chevy Chase, but yeah, who knows? He's a mixed up guy. I don't know what's going on with Chevy Chase, because it seems like he's tough to work with.
Oh, you think?
Yeah. Well,
so I've heard.
Yeah.
A tad difficult.
You think yelling the N-word on set?
And calling Dan Harmon, leaving them voicemails in the middle of the night that are crazy.
You think that's out of line?
Yeah. So Caddyshack, I remember seeing like the background doc about this movie, which almost as fun as the movie. I love this movie. This movie I think is hilarious.
Oh, it's great.
Caddyshack.
It's a classic.
It has everything.
Gunga Galunga.
Yeah. So I says, "Yo, Llama, how about a little something, for the effort?" And he says, "There will be no money, but when you die, on your deathbed, you will receive total consciousness." So I got that going for me, which is nice.
Boy, Mark had that locked and loaded.
No, I just remember this movie so well.
That was a great impression.
The lines are just so funny.
Yeah.
I got that going for me.
And then Rodney Dangerfield, oh, look at that hat. I bet you get that hat, you get a free cup of soup.
Oh, it's like the Dance of the Dead.
Lance Rodney, too.
Yeah.
It did, kind of in movies.
In movies, absolutely. Yeah. And I love that scene where Chevy Chase is doing coke and playing the piano.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Is that the scene that you can see Doug doing coke in the background?
That's the dinner scene where right before it, Dangerfield says to the girl, I bet you were great before electricity. And then in the background you see Doug Kenney snorting coke, like on a level above, like on another table.
Yeah.
With some woman there. But yeah, I think what was going on the screen there was really going on hardcore in the back and like after the cameras were off.
I wonder if they specifically wrote that actual, character for Rodney Dangerfield because he's so perfect. That's such an iconic role for him. It's like that is him.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Definitely adapted to the role. I'm sure that there was some improvisation and
yeah,
changes.
true.
Yeah, because in part 2, in Caddyshack 2, actually, they developed more of because Jackie Mason was actually that role, and he was like a new money real estate construction guy, and maybe that's like someone like that that he knew, like that Doug knew as a kid,
right?
But adding. Dangerfield just added a whole new twist to it. You probably had to rewrite the script basically, knowing that Ronnie was going to be in it.
It's a brilliant mix if you think about it. The Bill Murray goofy character with Chevy Chase, his sarcasm, and then Rodney Dangerfield, just total comic self-deprecation, one-liners.
Yeah. At some point, Rodney Dangerfield just goes into his crazy golf bag and just turns up music. Hey, let's dance.
Journey, right?
Yeah. Don't stop believing.
Oh, no, it's Any Way You Want.
Yeah, I know that song. Yeah. Yeah, and then Lindsey Buckingham from Fleetwood Mac had the great theme song for it. I'm all right.
Oh,
Don't nobody worry about me.
Right.
That's Lindsay Buckingham from Fleetwood Mac.
Yep.
And he went on to do Holiday Road.
Yes, he did a lot of the National Lampoon songs. So the movie does okay at the box office. The reviewers and the critics destroy it.
Wow.
Like ruin it.
For as much as Animal House was praised, this was slaughtered.
This is when the reviewers started getting the hair up their ass for good comedies. Like kind of stuff they would do to Happy Gilmore later on.
Yeah, and Tommy Boy they trashed.
If it's funny and it's from people that, bullied me in high school, I hate it. I think that maybe that's the vibe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's so funny that in Newsweek, I think specifically went out of their way to give it 1 star, 2 stars or something.
Comedy just doesn't get any respect.
Doesn't get no respect.
I don't get
no respect.
I'll tell you.
Which is absurd to think about now because Caddyshack is such a classic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Meanwhile, back at the Lampoon, Matty Simmons hires this guy, P.J. O'Rourke, to be the new head editor. And he hires people like John Hughes, who would go on to do the vacation movies for National Lampoon. So, you know, the world does not end with Doug Kenney, basically. Doug Kenney is not really focused on the magazine anymore, but it still goes on after him. Now, so back in L.A., Doug becomes a full-blown coke addict, and the drugs were not working anymore.
Some say he relied on the drugs, like he couldn't function without them.
No, yeah, I think he's just a daily user of drugs, and he didn't know who he was without them anymore. And I think the 70s, Hollywood, he was in the worst possible scenarios that he could be in.
Yep.
He's in his 30s now, too. The drugs in your 20s are so much more fun than drugs in your 30s.
Right. And we touched upon that in the Amy Winehouse episode.
Yes. Exactly, yeah.
And I have to add that it's also the most dangerous scenario of them all, a drug addict with money.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so Doug would like bring his coke dealers to like meetings and stuff. So he's like the most depressed person you've ever met, and like he doesn't know why, but I don't think he understands. People don't like, he would be like a sober guy now. Like people, you know, you meet people in LA like, yeah, I'm kind of sober.
Yeah.
Because you know what drugs do to you, to your nervous system and stuff, and you know that you got to stop at some point. But no one knows that at this time. I think that's my best explanation of what's going on.
Thought coke was healthy to some degree at that time.
They knew Freud did it, and they're like, hey, if Freud did it, you know, he seemed like a happy guy.
So you think he'd be sober if he had lived?
That's what I think.
Or California sober, where you don't drink, but you do edibles?
Yeah.
Smoke a little weed, man.
Yeah. You do yoga and edibles, and you just sweat it out or something.
Yet they're sober.
Yeah. They're California sober. So he's depressed. Chevy Chase is out there too. He's depressed because he also hates how bad the reviews are for Caddyshack. Both of them are, I think they think Caddyshack is going to ruin them, and they don't know that it's a great movie because it hasn't really hit its stride yet.
Yeah.
You know, people aren't really talking about it as a monumental comedy because in the moment of this time in like 76 or 77, whatever time it is, you don't really realize, you know, because you have like Taxi Driver coming out. You have like The Godfather coming out. You're like, comparably, I'm a horrible movie maker because of all this stuff coming out.
It was an unfair comparison because it still was profitable, but it wasn't the huge success that Animal House was.
That's a good point because I think everything with Doug is a comparison to stuff he sees around him.
Mm-hmm.
Because he went to Harvard. He's like, I'm not like these guys because they grew up like this. You know, that's why I'm not going to be happy unless I am like this. And that's why that was his big drive. And he just looked at everything around him. He's like, yeah, I'm okay now, but this person over here, he's doing so much better. What about that?
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of what Hollywood is.
And the idea of cult classics didn't even exist yet, really.
No.
Because you didn't have that concept
That's a
of
good
like,
point.
it's going direct to VHS and then it'll crush.
Yeah.
You're in this time where SNL didn't exist, the National Lampoon didn't exist, and then all these things are just being
You had
created.
no perspective
Yeah.
or context of what, you know, where do you stand in the zeitgeist of the world. I said the
Zero
world
context.
zeitgeist, so don't make fun of me.
Hey.
I'm smart. I drove through Harvard one time.
Yeah.
And also, he's used to excelling. He's used to everything he does is like, you know what I mean? Like he tops himself and keeps going up the ladder. So Caddyshack felt like he was going down the ladder.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Even though it's crazy because it's like a classic movie.
Yeah.
So him and Chevy Chase, both with terrible drug dependencies, decide let's both take a trip to Kauai, Hawaii to get clean and feel better. What better place?
Yeah. It's better than Miami.
Absolutely. Anything's better than Miami. Well, especially for the drugs and stuff.
Kauai is where they filmed Jurassic Park. So
Oh.
that's what it looks like. It's just a sprawling green
Beautiful
land.
place.
Yeah.
There's a giant T-Rex.
Yeah.
And Doug is doing some hiking and stuff around there, which will come up in just a moment.
That sounds like a very healthy activity.
It
for
does,
the
doesn't it?
Body and soul.
Yeah, why not? So these two guys, like Chevy Chase is crazy. I don't know if the story he tells is true or he thinks it's funny or what it is. But Chevy said he jokingly would yell that he was jumping out his hotel window and Doug would storm in while Chevy hid in the room. And he'd be like, I'm going now. I'm jumping, Doug. I'm going. You know, and do that. And then he'd
What the
have
fuck?
Doug run in there and think he
Yeah.
was, like, as a joke.
He would add sound effects like ruffling the chairs to
Yeah.
make it sound like he jumped.
What a nut.
No, that is like a narcissist checking in on how much someone cares about them.
You think so?
I think so.
Interesting.
If he did it multiple times and Doug did it every time, he's like, "Oh, you're my lapdog. I got you."
Yeah. Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe he did treat him like that. I don't know, but either way, Chevy gets a job, probably doing Fletch or something. It's like, all right, well, see you later, Doug. I'm out of here. And he just leaves Hawaii, and just takes off.
Well, actually, at this time, because this is when, 1980?
Yeah, 1980.
Yep.
So this is before Vacation. This is before Fletch. So I think Chevy was depressed because he left SNL after 1 year.
Yeah.
Because he had such a big ego.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going to go make it in the movies. And he did some profitable movies, like Foul Play with Goldie Hawn, but he did not have an Animal House yet. So his biggest, most high-profile project was Caddyshack. So I think at that time, he was down in the dumps just like Doug Kenney. There was no proof yet that he was going to have a solid Hollywood career.
That's a good point. Yeah, maybe he just, also couldn't see past, where he was. And because
he probably regretted leaving SNL. He was seeing John Belushi, Bill Murray, even though they co-starred in Caddyshack. Bill Murray was, killing it on SNL.
Yeah. Maybe he think he screwed up big time. Yeah.
I think so.
Because he only got one movie in order to. He wanted to get into the movies in order to leave SNL, but he didn't have it wasn't that locked in. He just assumed he was gonna get all this stuff, and he probably pissed a couple executives off too.
Yes.
He probably burned some bridges, and he knew he did that.
It was a slow start for sure because
Yeah.
he also did this movie starring Munchkins from The Wizard of Oz.
Okay.
And it was a complete disaster.
Really?
Probably around 1979. Kyle, can you look that up quick? Just the name of it.
What is it?
Just do Chevy Chase Munchkin movie.
Under the Rainbow.
There you go.
1981 American comedy film directed by Steve Rash, starring Chevy Chase, Carrie Fisher, Eve Arden, and Billy Barty.
So I guess this was to come.
So who's who?
Maybe
Wow.
that's when he left Kauai to film
Maybe.
this disastrous Munchkin movie.
And maybe he read it, and maybe that's what made him depressed.
Here's the log line. Nazis, federal agents, aristocrats, and 150 little people descend on Hollywood for the filming of The Wizard of Oz. Sounds great.
Well, the funny thing was that the genre of movies that Chevy Chase would do later on is the genre that Doug Kenney set up with Animal House, basically.
Absolutely.
So it took a little bit to catch up to get those scripts out there for the studios to buy them in order for to kind of create this path for Chevy Chase.
Because Vacation came around finally, I think, in 1983.
Yeah.
And that was also reuniting him with Harold Ramis, who directed Caddyshack.
Yeah.
So Vacation was very much a second chance.
And John Hughes, who was the writer of
Right.
that. Yeah.
So
Who did the National Lampoon.
Yeah, because he wrote in the National Lampoon Vacation 58.
Yeah.
The article which it was based on.
He's probably lucky because he's probably going into that, National Lampoon office and telling John Hughes to his face, "You're a loser. No one wants to fuck you because you're not on SNL." And meanwhile, John Hughes is writing this movie that'll catapult his fucking career.
Wow.
Chevy Chase is such a dick, man.
But Vacation, great movie.
Great movie. I like most of that. The Vegas one, okay.
Well,
Not
Christmas
so
is
much.
great.
Christmas. Yeah, I would say Christmas and the first one.
Yeah, that's a go-to Christmas movie. That, Scrooge, and Bad Santa is now my favorite Christmas movie.
Yeah, I can agree with that list.
Okay. So, Catherine Walker comes and she hangs out with Doug in the absence of Chevy Chase, who had just left to do this whatever shitty movie. So Catherine Walker eventually has to leave herself because she has to go to work also, and she leaves Kauai. She leaves Doug by himself, who's just kind of left on this island, age 33, going on hikes, doesn't know what to do with himself, is in this kind of depressive spiral. One day, August 27th, 1980, Doug goes to this cliff, which is called the Hanapepe Valley Lookout. He drives his car up to it, and he was believed to have jumped off a 35-foot cliff to his death. It is later called an accidental death. There's been a lot of chatter and a lot of discussions about what may have happened here.
Did Chevy Chase fly back and find him?
No. The police found him. They found his car there, and they found his body. Which they identified him by his glasses, actually, because they just found this kind of like sunburned and broken body at the bottom of this kind of ravine here.
Oof. So he just landed on the ground or some rocks or something?
Yeah, a bunch of rocks. Yeah.
God.
It wasn't even that big of a fall. Some people said he might have fell, and that's what the official police thing is, that it was accidental and he just fell. So someone said like about him, there was distinct emptiness there. There was a vacancy that, he just didn't want to be alive anymore, and they kind of felt that. Some people thought he was just kind of being over the top and dramatic and like, that my life's over, but maybe Doug really felt that on some level and he just didn't articulate that with some other people.
But speaking of John Landis, he said that they were in talks for a future project.
Yeah.
And they were going to meet in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So he thinks that he didn't commit suicide because that doesn't match the demeanor of someone that is depressed and wants to die.
That their future plan. Well, that's
Exactly.
that's the concept of suicidal and depressed, is that there is no future.
Yeah.
Yep. So the fact that he was excitedly planning this project with John Landis.
Yeah, they also found in Doug Kenney's hotel room there a bunch of notes for, I think, that project he had been planning, jokes and an outline for an entire movie.
Wow.
There was a gag line found that he had left that said, "These last few days are among the happiest I've ever ignored." Which, okay, it's just his way of saying things aren't that bad.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if maybe he just drove up to that ravine or whatever, and maybe he was pushed.
That's the other theory, right? That it was a drug deal gone wrong.
Yeah.
And that the drug dealers beat him up and threw him off the cliff.
Maybe.
Because he refused to pay them or something.
Yeah, maybe he had been there for a while and he like really pissed off the wrong people and they finally found him. I don't know. But he had the money, but like there's no ATMs out there. I don't know how he would have got it to these drug dealers, but I'm sure he had a ton of cash on him. I don't know.
And Chevy thinks that he tripped.
Yeah. Chevy does not think that he killed himself, but Chevy doesn't know either.
I think John Landis was landing in a helicopter to meet him and kind of bumped him off with the helicopter.
The project that they were planning, it was probably the Twilight Zone segment.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So he dodged the helicopter with that one.
A lot of people have their own theories. This guy, his buddy Chris Miller, who co-wrote Animal House with him, said he fell while looking for a good place to jump.
Oh, my God. That's dark.
Sounds like one of our jokes.
Yeah.
33 years old,
Same age as John Belushi and Chris Farley.
And they died 2 years apart, John Belushi and Doug Kenney.
And Jesus died at 33.
And that's true.
Wow. Yeah, John Belushi, 1982, March 1982.
Yep.
And this is March 1980.
August.
Yeah.
Oh, this is August.
Yeah.
Yeah, August.
Okay, well,
August 27th, 1980.
all right, well, 2 years apart.
Yeah.
Anyway.
After his death at the funeral, his Harvard friend, Peter Ivers, plays the song Beautiful Dreamer on his harmonica. A few years later, Peter would be bludgeoned to death with a hammer in Los Angeles.
Ooh.
Yeah, that will be an episode for sure.
Absolutely.
Peter Ivers. That is a crazy story.
Yeah.
Another one that, has some drug stories with it and all that.
The National Lampoon published a tribute to Doug by Maddie Simmons with a cartoon showing a sign next to the edge of a cliff with the inscription, "Doug Kenney slipped here."
Wow.
Okay, so
I guess that's what you get when you're like an edgelord and then you die.
Yeah, they hit him hard.
Yeah. I think that's what Doug would have liked, maybe.
Not as hard as he hit the rocks.
Oh! Hold the rocks, please. Hello, nurse.
I'll take a cliff, no rocks.
I'd like Doug Kenney on the rocks, please. Yeah, that's... it's hard to say. I mean, it seems like he just slipped.
Yeah.
But...
I don't know. Yeah, he could have. I'd really have to go down there, similar to like the book depository, Grassy Knoll, and all that. I need to see it.
Yeah. I mean, there was probably, if they're saying that it was a fall, there must have been disturbed ground, because that would be like you're actually running, like you're fighting to stay on. We're actually just trying to jump, there would be nothing.
Yeah.
There'd be like one footprint.
Yeah, and he did not see the success of the vacation movies.
No, or like how Caddyshack would live on to be like a cult classic, amazing movie that everyone loved.
Yeah.
He's kind of lucky he didn't see Caddyshack 2, but besides that, and Vegas Vacation.
Jackie Mason doing this, doing that, doing this.
God, Jackie Mason. They actually tried to make like a chain of National Lampoon comedy clubs that I worked at.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
They partnered with Dave and Buster's, and so they would be just random rooms in Dave and Buster's National
That
Lampoon
sounds
Comedy
insane.
Club. Yeah, this was like 2008, 2009, 2010.
So you just walk into the National Lampoon comedy room at the Dave and Buster's?
You would have to go inside a Dave and Buster's, and the National Lampoon Comedy Club would be there. Yeah.
That sounds like worse than Flappers, kind of.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, it sounds hack. Sounds like a hack comedy club.
Doug Kenney, everything I know about him now, would have cried seeing those clubs being run.
Yeah, comedy has died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did they serve like subversive, funny things on the menu?
No.
Like hot dog, and it
Yeah.
looks like a dog on a plate.
Can I have a Hitler hamburger, please?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, nothing like that.
Hitler had some good ideas hamburger.
Yeah. Nope, it was just the Dave and Buster's menu.
Just the regular old, not funny, not subversive menu.
Yeah.
I'd like the blueberry booby parfait.
Coming right up.
So yeah, National Lampoon. Let's talk about that for a quick second. That was so synonymous with box office comedies.
Yes.
You had Vacation, you had Animal House.
Yeah.
And somehow down the line, I don't know what the hell happened. Obviously, the magazine fizzled out.
Yeah, it went off the rails.
Well, you didn't have, the main people, the spirit of it that was there. It was like, it was everything that John Belushi, Brian Doyle Murray, Bill Murray, all those people were. And like, there was something around that level of talent that you just, once that's all gone and dispersed and people are doing other things, there's nothing really there. If you get like a John Hughes here and there, or you get like Al Jean that kind of come and go, there's no one really tethered to it that actually makes it work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the problem, though. It's a nightmare making it work. That's why Henry Beard and Doug Kenney, they loved it until they hated it very quickly.
But then in later years, I don't know enough about it to know exactly the deals, but they would sell the name. Like they would let people buy the rights to use the National Lampoon's name, and it would be the worst movies you've ever seen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Like Dorm Days or
worse
Stuttering John from the Howard Stern Show. He made a movie called National Lampoon Presents One Too Many.
Ugh.
And
God.
you talk about the worst movie ever
Yeah.
created.
Yeah, they would license to anybody and everybody who wanted to give them $1.
We could make a movie with their name on it.
Let's just get it. National Lampoon presents Death and Entertainment.
Really? Is it public domain now? Maybe we can just
Pretty
use it?
much. If you look at the list of movies,
Yeah, it's probably $5.
Well, that
there's
To
like
be able to
3
use the
good
name.
ones, like Vacation, Animal House,
Yeah.
Christmas Vacation, and then there's just a long list of like
It dips
National
down.
Lampoon presents Tits and Ass.
it dips down very quickly after that.
Yeah.
Final thoughts.
R.I.P. Doug Kenney. That
Yeah.
is a crazy life to live. I think it's depressing to know that he never really got to enjoy his work.
No.
Even the benefits of his work, getting the money and everything, didn't seem like it did it for him, which is sad.
Yeah, it was a large fall from grace. No pun intended.
It could also be that's what hanging out with Chevy Chase for a week will do to you,
Yeah,
make you suicidal.
could be.
Yeah, we don't know all the details. Chevy has not provided them.
He's very vague on the exact details, and he says that was Doug was his best friend, and he cared about him and this and that. I don't know. There's just a lot into that you'll just never know. And I think some people that really know what happened, they're scared to actually come out and say exactly what their thoughts are or their
Yeah.
theories. It seemed like he had a lot of people around him that died at weird ages, like his brother and John Belushi.
Yeah.
Good friends.
Even Michael O'Donoghue, who lived to be a bit older, but he died in 1994.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
He was just deteriorated from alcohol and drug abuse.
Yeah.
So these guys were all just
Yeah.
I mean, it's a
Zipped up on
70s,
everything.
man. It's a different time.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, do we have any housekeeping or anything to do at the end of the episode here? Or?
We have a few nice comments about our last couple of episodes.
Let's hear.
You know, someone, Mexican and a Jew, this is the name of the user, wrote that
Sounds like an article of the National Lampoon.
Yeah.
they loved one of the rides Kyle talked about that was crazy at Disney World. And,
Mission Space.
Yeah, and they agreed with him.
Yeah.
Love it.
So, and then we got Emily Peterson saying, awesome podcast as always.
Hey.
Thank you, Emily. We love you.
Yeah, and then Cromwell Bear, one of our OG fans.
He's back.
Wrote, genuinely funny again. Love this pod.
There we go.
Shout out. Thank you.
And then we touched upon the craze that Mark unleashed.
His only legs.
With his legs.
Yeah.
On the Storm Chasers episode.
I don't know how I feel about it.
Dun, 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 dun.
Everybody
Start
worked
spreading the legs.
Man, I mean, you got the Deados worked up.
I saw that.
With
yeah.
that. They be feeling a certain something.
Hot and steamy.
That's why I got them shined up. I got my shine box ready.
I went home and got my legs buffed.
And Tim Loss said those calves are about as good as this episode.
Jesus Christ. I'm blushing over here.
And then we have Braxton Greenwell wrote, I enjoyed this one.
Very nice.
Okay. I guess not the last one.
Very insightful.
So, yeah, a lot of nice stuff out there.
That's great.
We'll take it.
Thank you, everybody. Make sure you go check us out on Instagram, TikTok, Patreon. You can go there. You can get a free trial to our paid paywall subscriber-only content, okay?
Please.
Including our episodes on John Mark Carr, which is not to be missed.
It is not.
And then an upcoming Disneyland
Yes.
supplement to our Disney World episode.
Exactly.
Yes. Get out there.
So there's a lot going on. Make sure you get into it. Send us an email at deathandentertainment@gmail.com if you want to give us an episode suggestion, a recommendation, something you want to see on this podcast. And I think that's it.
That's all. That's all, folks. Thank you so much.
And until next week,
don't go dying on us. Bye.
You have just heard
A true Hollywood murder mystery.
I have never seen anything like this before.
The movies, Broadway, music, television, all of it.
A place that manufactures nightmares.
Okay, everybody, that's a wrap.
Good night. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon.